I'm joined on the Crispin Flintoff show from Germany by Ronnie Barkan. How you doing, Ronnie?
Hi, Crispin. Doing well.
You've been in touch with me to show me some information that I wasn't aware of, and I think people should know about, which is what's going on in Israel in terms of laws that are being drawn up or have already been passed on free speech, effectively, around what's happened in Gaza, and since the 7th of October. I'll just show on the screen that this is a law that has been passed, law prohibiting the denial of the October 7th massacre. This is a translation into English, obviously. Could you tell us a bit about this?
Yes, this is a machine translation, so maybe it's not exact, but it's good enough. Yeah, they legislated this law in late January. Basically, they regard denial of the 7th of October events similarly to denial of the Holocaust. And what they mean by denial, which is not very clear in the law actually, but they speak about denial and basically any show of support or solidarity with Hamas and their accomplices. So, it's a very broad spectrum in the resistance in general and who knows what else. I mean, we know that Israel has already arrested many Israeli citizens who are, Palestinians, were arrested for simple expression of support for the people of Gaza, not even specifically for the resistance. So I don't know to what extent they are going to interpret this law, but that law states that anyone who, according to that law, um, denies the events of the 7th of October, meaning denies the narrative, the Israeli narrative. It's not about denying the facts. It's about, whatever. It's a very vague kind of law.
It could
And
be about the number of people
for
or
example, if we question the official numbers, for example, that could be regarded as denial. You raised a good point here. They talk about certain numbers, okay? Many of those, for example, who were killed were soldiers. They were not civilians. So if I will question that, does that count as denial or not? Just as an example. If we question who killed those people, was it Palestinians from Gaza, or was it maybe Israelis who carried out a mass Hannibal directive, as the Israeli sources say? And we know that they are responsible for killing a lot of Israeli citizens. They would rather have them dead than reach Gaza, be taken captive in Gaza. If we question all of that, does that count as denial? Maybe, I don't know. It's quite vague. And then they say denial and support of Hamas or their
and
accomplices.
we've seen that in this country, the word support, I mean, it can mean anything as well. So denial
Exactly.
and support, both of those are quite vague.
Exactly. And
Um,
and according to that law that has been legislated, anyone who is deemed to violate that law could basically be imprisoned for up to 5 years.
wow. So that, why do you think they've done that now? Is that, do you have any idea what, I mean, it seems like a strange time to have passed this law.
Yeah, so when I saw the recent legislation that is still in the making, and we'll talk about that in a second, I kind of tweeted about it that Zionism is breathing its last. Because I think that these laws are really exposing, you know, that facade of as if there is something legitimate about the Zionist race state, which is a race state by design, carrying out, practicing apartheid from its very first day of existence and other crimes. Um, that notion, as if there is something that is somewhat democratic, somewhat legitimate about that race state, basically has been exposed to be false. And this has been exposed over the past year and a half, when Israel has been carrying out this full-on genocide for the whole world to see. being documented not only by the victims, but also by the perpetrators who boast about it. And they still carry on boasting about it. And their leaders, the people in the parliament and so on, they are also very, very explicit about their support for genocide, endorsement of genocide, regarding any and all Palestinian Gaza as human, animal, beast. They use different wordings for that, etc. Um, so this facade, as if there is something legitimate and normal and democratic, etc., has completely eroded or completely taken away. And now we are seeing the true face that was there all along, but now it is for the world to see. And that true face is now also being backed by these new types of legislation that deny basically any concept, any notion of free speech and democracy and all of that.
I mean, you sent me. There's more than that one
Yes.
there. I mean, there's this one. This is saying no visa or residence permit of any kind shall be granted to a person who is not an Israeli citizen or permanent resident of the State of Israel if he or the organization or entity on whose behalf he acts has knowingly done any of the following. One, and you've highlighted this, called publicly for the imposition of a boycott on the state of Israel. So no one who's calling for boycott would be allowed to enter
Mm-hmm.
Israel.
Right.
Um, Published in writing anything about the denying the Holocaust, fair enough. Published in writing statements denying the massacre of October 7th. So this is the same
Mm-hmm.
principle as we just talked about. And then this one here, which is an interesting extra to me, um, published in writing or orally statements supporting the prosecution of Israeli citizens in a foreign country or in an international tribunal for actions carried out as part of their duties in the Israeli Defense Forces or in one of Israel's security branches. Uh, so international tribunal, that must be the ICC. Is that what we're talking
Yes.
about here?
Yes, correct.
Oh,
So that law that you just went through, this is for foreigners, basically, that will be denied entry into Israel, also known Palestine, also known as Israel. Um, Basically, they will be denied entry based on what you read, and you saw that they are pretty much equating a denial of the Holocaust with denial of the 7th of October events, according to their version of what happened.
mm.
And what is even more telling is the fact that they say that if you, Crispin, has, some sense of morality and you respect the law and especially international law, which was, I have to remind you, legislated following the Holocaust, following the genocide that was carried out by the Nazis. Um, if you respect that we have to take action in order not to have that happen yet again, then you will be denied entry. And then the third law is what will happen to people like myself,
So I'll
who
just
is
put
actually a
that one
citizen
on.
of that state.
I'll just put that one on here. This
Yeah.
one, is
This
that
is still in the making.
this is
This is
nearly
before the
nearly
first
passed.
reading. Yeah.
But this one's it is a follow-up, obviously. If people
Yes.
from outside Israel can't enter the country on those for those particular reasons, then this is what
Yes.
happens if you are from Israel,
Yes.
effectively, and what
Correct.
happens if
Yes,
you
and you can see the title of this law is about protecting. It's a little difficult for me to read from here, but maybe you can
bill for
read
the
it. But it's
protection of Israeli public officials from actions of the International Criminal Court in The Hague against the State of Israel. So it spells out
it is
the crime.
explicitly about protecting them from actions of the ICC, which is, the highest court in the land, which is the one that is about, basically carrying out these very important laws that were legislated to allow for some decent behavior between states, and saying that some things are not allowed by any state and also going after war criminals themselves, so ICJ and ICC.
I mean, it says here that a person who provides information to the ICC shall be sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. And
Correct.
then it says, for, then it says something about people are being, they also get life imprisonment.
Yes, it says if it is confidential information, classified information, then this could mean a life imprisonment. If I look at the law and I say, oh, actually, the law says that the crime of crimes, the most serious thing that any country can do is commit genocide, and any international body is obligated to work against that. Obligated. It's not a question of like interpretation. And obviously, any individual or a collective is actually required, not obligated, but basically encouraged to help, to assist in putting an end to genocide. Then, if I dare to follow international law, I may be I may end up in prison in Israel for doing that, for basically abiding by international law. Think about that.
Well, I mean, this is to stop people whistleblowing. I mean, if you're a member of the Israeli armed forces and you've seen something, you've been commanded to do something, and you want to say, "Look, I had no chance of saying no. They told me I had to do this." I mean, that would be really important evidence because there must be soldiers who are intimidated about, they've given orders, you've got to do this thing, and they want to say, no, look, I had no choice. They were telling me I had to do it. They would be the people that legislation's about, wouldn't it, really? It's about those people who
So
could blow the whistle on it.
I believe that that legislation deals with several aspects, several elements that Israel is worried about. The NGOs in Israel, the ones that call themselves human rights organizations, even though very few of them have to actually deal with human rights, they make it about themselves and they say, oh, that law is limiting our ability to act within Israel because, because our activity may be regarded as assisting the ICC and so on. Um, those soldiers, as you mentioned, the ones who maybe not full-on Nazis and still have some sense of humanity in them, they may be discouraged from doing anything about, raising an issue with that because maybe, as you said, maybe they will also be violating the law in some way. Um, Obviously, anyone who dares to supply any type of information, and obviously the largest group that this law is targeting are the Palestinians, the 48ers, the Palestinians who are citizens of the state. Okay, 20% of the citizens of Israel, roughly 1.2 million people, are 48ers, and obviously the vast majority of them are, uh, on the side of Gazans, and if they only did anything to protect the people there in Gaza, maybe they have family in Gaza and they care about them and they wish to um, protect them or to seek justice. If they dare to publish any type of information that will be used by the ICC, they could be imprisoned for that. So basically, it is at the very least an act of silencing by the state, but it also does something else. Just like the US, the very first thing that they did, that Trump did after being elected, is basically saying, hosting Netanyahu. He was the first official to visit. And I think that this is kind of giving a middle finger to the international court and to the whole rules-based order. And we see the same happening right now with Israel doing that, and also Germany. Germany just, Merz, who was just elected a few days ago in Germany, also made a clear statement about being happy to host Netanyahu here in Germany, basically in violation of the arrest warrant that was issued by the International Court. Now, what we are seeing is basically that we have this collusion of states that are putting themselves on one side of the law, one side of history, and then the rest of the world, which is on the other side. And this rift will probably become even more pronounced and clearer for everyone to see. And then the question is what is going to happen about it. So basically, we have over the past decades, we've had the fascist forces uniting. You know, Bolsonaro and whatever. You had so many, like okay, in Argentina, in Hungary, in different places, obviously, North America, and we have the fascist forces uniting. But we also need the anti-fascist forces to unite, and especially now, especially when this whole issue of the ICC is becoming so relevant.
Mm.
But this is, I think, one of the main discussions that should be held by anyone about where do you stand on this. Another thing that's happening, which is more kind of personally as someone coming from Palestine, also known as Israel, is at what point do Israelis, the ones, as I said, who still have some humanity left in them, at what point do they say, okay, it's about time to pack up and leave? And I think that this is a very, very important discussion that Israelis should have among themselves.
Mm.
Definitely the ones who are activists, who are anti-Zionist, they've been having this discussion for quite a while now. Not everyone can leave. It's not that easy. I mean, especially if you have family there, if you have whatever, all kinds of obligations. Not everyone has a dual passport and so on. But just like the case of Germany 90 years ago, I feel exactly the same way as if I was a German 90 years ago who stands up to the state, who stands up to Nazism, fascism. I am a staunch anti-Nazi, anti-fascist, anti-Zionist, and all for the very same reason. Okay, so where do I stand here? How do I deal with this whole situation in that context? Just as if I was a German back then, how would I deal with that? I think that is a really important and difficult discussion to have.